Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana. We're here today with special guest, Dr. Steve Taylor, who's here to share with us his new book, Time Expansion Experiences: The Psychology of Time Perception and the Illusion of Linear Time. So have you ever had a moment where time almost stood still? Well, today's guest is going to share with us the science behind this phenomenon. So, Dr. Steve Taylor is the author of The Clear Light, Spiritual Science, The Leap, The Calm Center, and several other books on psychology and spirituality. Eckhart Tolle has described his work as an important contribution to the global shift in consciousness. Steve is a senior lecturer in psychology at Leeds Beckett University in the UK. He is the chair of the Transpersonal Psychology section of the British Psychology Society. For the past 9 years, he's been included in the Mind, Body, Spirit magazine's list of the 100 spiritual, influential living people. So welcome to the show, Dr. Steve Taylor.
Hi, Marianne. Great to be with you.
Oh my goodness, what an honor it is to have you here and to talk about this book. What inspired you to write this one?
It was really an accident I had 10 years ago. I had a car crash. I was driving along the middle lane of a highway and a truck tried to pull out. A truck didn't see my car and pulled out into the middle lane and hit the back of my car. So my car was spinning around in the middle of the highway. And it was a busy highway, so a lot of cars around. So I was sure that that I was going to have a serious accident. But time seemed to stand still. I felt as though I had so much time to try to think about the situation and to consider what to do, and everything became very clear. I looked around and I could see the lines of cars stretching behind. I could see the frightened faces of the other drivers behind me. So, and I was filled with this strange sense of calmness and detachment almost, and sound seemed to disappear. I felt like I was in a kind of cocoon of stillness. So it was almost like bizarrely, it was like a spiritual experience. And, I did take some preventative action. I tried to move the car to the left, tried to shift the car to the left where there was a crash barrier and away from the main line of traffic. And luckily I survived without any serious injuries. But though it probably, in reality, it probably took 3 or 4 seconds. But in my subjective experience, it felt much longer. Probably it felt like something maybe 45 seconds. So time seemed to expand at least 10 times its normal speed. And that was what inspired me to research these experiences and to collect them and to examine the causes of these experiences and the effects of these experiences and their significance.
Are you finding that most people have had an experience like this and they are just waiting for somebody to ask the right questions so they can share it?
Exactly, yeah. I found that almost everybody has had at least one time expansion experience. Not necessarily in the context of accidents. That's probably the situation where they're most common. But they can also occur in spiritual experiences, in moments of intense presence, in contact with nature. They can occur in deep meditation. They can occur under the influence of psychedelic substances. So yeah, I've collected a wide range of different contexts in which the experiences occur.
Well, I find this so fascinating because I actually had an experience like this. And
Oh
it
yeah,
was, yeah, it was dealing with a car crash. Not that didn't happen, but it was very, very close. And it would have been a car if it had happened, this guy wasn't paying attention, just, on his phone, was around a turn, was coming straight at the driver's side, which I was driving, and I was taking some friends up to a Buddhist temple. And,
mm,
yeah, it was close. I mean, I could see the guy's shirt, what he was wearing, the top of his head, you know? So
yeah,
but it's interesting because I was very calm throughout the whole thing, and it's almost I wouldn't say like it was an expectant experience, but
mm,
it was one that I walked away from and I was like, "Okay, well, that almost happened," but it was almost like my soul was prepared for it.
yeah. That is a strange thing about these experiences that they're almost uncanny. The sense of calmness, and it's almost like a premonition that that you are, yeah, I like the way you describe that. You're prepared for the experience, and you're so calm that, and you have so much time to take some sort of preventative action or to contemplate the situation. And that, yeah, there's this strange sense of stillness both within you and outside you that's very similar to spiritual experiences. Well, what I think happens is that, in these moments of intense shock and intense crisis, we do shift into a different state of consciousness, into a state of consciousness which is similar to the higher state of consciousness we experience in spiritual experiences. In a way, these experiences are a glimpse of our spiritual nature.
I think that's so profound. I mean, is there a case study that you could share with us of an experience, I mean, beyond yours is so
Mm.
profound, that's really stood out for you during your research?
Yeah. One of the most dramatic, there were many sort of dramatic life-threatening situations where people felt that time expansion enabled them to save their lives or to save other people's lives. One of them was an American lady I interviewed who she was she was living in a two-story house, and one morning some robbers tried to break into her house as her husband was leaving for work. So her husband was grappling these robbers, and she was watching from the balcony. She was 7 months pregnant at the time, and she had a replica gun, so she waved a replica gun towards the robbers. But the robbers had a real gun, so they shot at her on the balcony. And she said that they shot 3 or 4 times, but she had so much time to sort of prepare herself to respond to these shots. And she remembered once the first shot, or once she saw the gun, she remembered that somebody had told her once that the best thing to do when somebody shoots at you is just to drive straight to the ground immediately. But she realized that she was pregnant, so she had to dive in such a way that she wouldn't harm her baby. So she was aware of this, so she fell in such a way that she wouldn't harm her baby. But almost the shots somehow seemed to be in slow motion, so that she had time to avoid them, to time to get out of the way. So she was convinced that time expansion saved her life and saved her baby's life.
That's just remarkable how that came to being. Most people, when they are having a time expansion experience, are they aware that it's happening? Are they aware after? How does that work?
Well, at the time, they're involved in the drama of the situation, so they're not thinking too much about time. So it's usually at the end when they think, "Oh, wow, how did I do that?" They think, "Wow, how did I have so much time to prepare myself or to contemplate the situation?" I mean, there are other types of experiences which I call time cessation experiences, where time doesn't just slow down; it actually disappears altogether. That can happen in near-death experiences, for example, when people feel that they simply step outside time and time no longer exists at all. So sometimes in those moments, people are aware that time doesn't exist, that time has disappeared, and they're aware that the future and the past seem to exist alongside the present, so that all time seems to be in the now.
Are there psychological or neurological mechanisms that might help explain why time appears to slow down or stop completely?
There have been some attempts to explain these experiences in neurological terms, but they're not very satisfactory. One of the most sort of well-known interpretations is that they're caused by a surge in noradrenaline in the brain when we're in sort of critical situations. So it's like a kind of fight or flight response. The brain is flooded with noradrenaline, and that seems to make time pass more slowly. But that doesn't really make sense in terms of the calmness that people feel in these situations. That's not the kind of thing, the kind of state of mind that is related to the fight or flight response. And also there is the fact that these experiences occur in deep states of stillness, such as deep meditation, intense moments of presence, where there is absolutely no reason why a person should be, where their brain should be filled with noradrenaline. So that explanation doesn't really make sense. Aside from that, there are no real attempts to explain the experiences. So I mean, I think, yeah, you have to look elsewhere. You have to look for a more kind of spiritual explanation for these experiences.
Are there other times where time seems to be a little bit out of whack or doing something different? I know I've heard many of my friends, and I'm probably going to age myself, talk about how time is speeding up. I'm wondering if this is like like a normal phenomenon.
Yeah, there are some kind of more mild variations of time experience that people have. And one of those is the feeling that time seems to speed up as we get older. Almost everybody reports that feeling that Christmas seems to come round every year. Interestingly, in Islamic countries, people say that Ramadan seems to come around more quickly every year. So it seems to be a common or universal human experience. There's also the fact that time seems to stretch out when we have new experiences. I can remember when I was young, when I was a young man, I went to live in Germany. I sort of fell in love with a girl and moved to Germany, and everything was so different and so kind of exhilarating and exciting and unfamiliar that when I came back to England for a holiday a few months later, I felt as though I'd been away for years, even though it was only a few months, because my experience had been so stretched by unfamiliarity and newness that time seemed to have slowed down radically. And there's also things like your time slows down when we're bored, it slows down when we're in pain. So all of these are common human experiences, but these experiences, they're quite mild variations. They're not of the same magnitude as the radical time expansion we sometimes experience in emergencies or accidents.
I would have to say that that experience for me at least was very remarkable and different from other things. And it has me kind of thinking, I mean, how do these time expansion experiences differ from like when people are in the flow or hyper focused?
Mm. They're similar in a way, but again, the flow experience is quite mild. People normally say that time speeds up when they're in a state of flow. So a musician could be playing their instrument for a few hours, but it feels like only 1 hour. A sportsman probably a sports person could be playing a game that lasts for 2 hours that seems to last 10 minutes. Because when you're in a state of flow, time seems to disappear because you're so focused. And I think that's probably to do with information processing. That in a state of flow, your brain isn't processing much information because you're cut off from your surroundings. Your mind is very quiet. There aren't many thoughts in your mind, and that's why it's well known that a state of intense absorption makes time speed up radically, or speed up quite a lot. But the difference is that when you're in a state of I sometimes call it hyper absorption or super absorption. Like, for example, when a sports person becomes incredibly focused in a state of drama, when the game or competition is in a critical situation, they sometimes switch into a state of consciousness which they call the zone. And in the zone, time can seem to slow down drastically, just like in an accident or emergency. So that's why sportsmen or sportswomen often report these moments when time slows down drastically, and they feel that they have more time to position themselves, to react to their opponent's moves. Sometimes they report seeing the situation from above, almost like an out of body experience. So again, that stems from an altered state of consciousness, which we can slip into in a state of intense absorption.
Well, you mentioned something I'd like to touch on briefly. So you talked about almost like an out of body kind of experience. Is that similar to what time expansion experiences are?
That can Out of body experiences can happen in time expansion experiences. Certainly, there's a sense of detachment from the situation, which maybe you had that experience in an accident. Somehow you feel as though you're kind of watching it quite calmly, as if you're not personally involved in it. And sometimes sports people report that feeling. There are some racing drivers who report looking at themselves from above. There are also some reports of falls. Like, for example, when a mountaineer falls from the side of a mountain, they sometimes report, watching themselves from above, and again they feel a complete sense of serenity, even though they're close to death. So there does seem to be an out of body element in some time expansion experiences.
Do these experiences tend to have us feel more positive?
Oh, definitely, yeah. That's one of the most common effects of the experiences is that people feel that, well, on the one hand they feel that they are more resilient. They feel that they have hidden strength which wasn't evident before. But they also feel somehow that life is more meaningful, that the world is more harmonious, because these experiences, they do have a spiritual element. There is often a sense of beauty, even in the context of an accident. Everything becomes very bright and real and beautiful. But I think most importantly, the spiritual aspect of these experiences reveals a harmonious dimension of reality, which people never forget. And they also realize. I mean, I remember this from my experience that I never expected to be in such a dangerous situation and yet feel so calm and confident. So it's very it's great to realize that that when these situations do arise, we will respond in this calm and confident and a resilient way. So it reveals a new positivity within us.
It's almost like we're tapping into higher states of consciousness.
Definitely, yeah. I think that's why these experiences are so important because they do reveal different aspects of ourselves. They do reveal different aspects of reality. In that sense, they're not dissimilar to experiences of deep meditation, and even to spiritual experiences that arise under the influence of psychedelics.
Well, you got that down with the cover, I'll tell you. The cover is very
Oh yeah,
eye-catching.
oh yeah, it's very psychedelic cover.
It is a very psychedelic cover, but it's interesting because while, it has that look, that's not what the whole book is about.
No, no. I mean, personally, I'm not. I think psychedelics can be useful in that they give us a glimpse of a heightened reality. They give us a glimpse of a spiritual dimension. But I'm not a big advocate of psychedelics. And that is only one element of the book. There's only about half a chapter where I discuss um, the time expanding effects of psychedelics. But I think the interesting thing there is really that psychedelics are just one way of shifting into a higher state of consciousness. There are many other ways, including accidents and emergencies. So, in a sense, accidents and emergencies reveal the same expansive dimension of reality, the same spiritual dimension of reality as deep meditation or as some psychedelic experiences.
Well, on that note, we're going to pause here for a quick break. We've been speaking with Dr. Steve Taylor in regards to his new book, Time Expansion Experiences: The Psychology of Time Perception and the Illusion of Linear Time. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors.
Are you an author, speaker, or expert who is looking for more publicity? Visit radioguestlist.com and sign up for free interview requests from shows looking for guests. Radio Guest List is the #1 free booking resource for radio, podcasts, and TV talk shows who are looking for experts like you right now. Visit radioguestlist.com and sign up today to get the visibility you deserve.
There comes a moment when you realize you're somewhere special. When you discover that each beautiful creature that you see has been rescued from a life of absolute horror and brought to this incredibly free place. Here's where their lives were forever changed and where yours will as well. Discover over 500 tigers, bears, and lions at the brand new visitor center at the Wild Animal Sanctuary just outside Denver. For more information, visit wildanimalsanctuary.org. Discover true freedom at the Wild Animal Sanctuary.
It's one thing to become attached to your perfect home, but what do you do when that home becomes attached to you? A family in dire need of a fresh start, a mysterious house tied to the past. Buried deep within the foundation of the old Far Hill Manor lies a centuries-old secret. Dark forces or something stronger just waiting to be discovered. Caretaker, a supernatural thriller by breakout authors R.J. Halpert.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
I'd like to thank Jason Eastwood at Guitarfulness for sharing his inspiring music and talent with us. His music is known worldwide for cultivating atmospheres of harmony, inner peace, and clarity. Visit Jason's website at guitarfulness.com. Join his newsletter, be part of his community, and download his music. Welcome back to Moments with Mary Ann. We're here today with special guest, Dr. Steve Taylor, who's here sharing with us his new book, Time Expansion Experiences: The Psychology of Time Perception and the Illusion of Linear Time. In your research, have you found any long-term psychological, emotional effects on people who have had these experiences?
I have found that there is this new sense of positivity. And again, that's not dissimilar to spiritual experiences. I found in my research into what I call awakening experiences that, even if an awakening experience, which is essentially a spiritual experience, even if it only lasts for a few seconds, it can have a long-lasting, even, a life-lasting positive experience. Because people do discover this positive dimension of reality, this sense of harmony, this sense of beauty. And once you've seen that, you never forget it. You always know it's there, even if you don't experience it right in that moment. So that changes people's perspective on reality. It changes their attitude to life. Often people, including after time expansion experiences in accidents or emergencies, they do become more spiritual. They start to investigate spirituality. They start to meditate. So yeah, it does. They do sometimes have a transformational effect.
I can understand that. After having an experience like that, it really does shift a perspective.
Yeah, yeah. It's quite similar to, I heard a story recently about an acquaintance of mine. I didn't realize this, but an acquaintance of mine told me about an experience that happened about 30 years ago when he was waiting on a train platform. And the person next to him, who was an elderly lady, fell onto the platform. Maybe she had some sort of medical emergency and fell onto the platform. But without realizing it, even before what he was aware of what he was doing, my friend jumped down onto the train track. Even though he could see in the distance that the train was approaching, he jumped down onto the train track and he lifted the lady back onto the platform. And he was totally amazed because he'd never thought of himself as a heroic person. And well, by the way, he did report that this happened in slow motion. He was aware that time seemed to expand. But the most important thing was that he'd never realized that he was a hero. So the fact that he was able to do this totally changed his perception of himself. He realized that, he was a heroic person. He could do something positive in the world. So he changed careers and, changed his attitude to his life. His self-esteem increased massively. So yeah, I think some, time expansion experiences can have that kind of effect.
So, could cultivating practices, I know we've kind of talked about this a little bit, but like mindfulness, meditation, increase the frequency of time expansive experiences in our everyday life?
I think so. I think the essential reason why these experiences occur is connected to our sense of boundary, the sense of boundary between us and the rest of the world. We all have a sense of separation to some degree. We feel that we are entities who live within our personal space, and the world is kind of on the other side, out there. But separation is a continuum. So some people are less or more separate than others. The first thing to mention is that these experiences occur when that sense of separation fades away, when the boundary between us and reality disappears. So in a sense, we become one with the world. And when that happens, time disappears because time seems to be related to that boundary. Time seems to be related to that sense of separateness. So any practice that helps to soften that boundary, that helps us to become more connected to the world and to other human beings and other living beings, will help us to expand time. And meditation is the essential practice which softens our self-boundary and makes us more connected. So meditation is a great way of, on the one hand, it could induce time expansion experiences. And on the other hand, it can slow down our perception of time. And it's been shown by research, which I cite in the book. Research suggests that long-term practitioners of meditation do have a slower sense of time than other people. So yeah, meditation is a really important practice.
It's interesting. There are many different roads that lead to time expansion experiences. And I think people are probably so delighted about this book right now because it gives a name to something that so many people have been experiencing.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the surprising findings, really, that these experiences are so common, not just in accidents, but in all kinds of situations. And people are also realize that they are also quite surprised that there's no kind of neurological explanation. You do have to look to a more spiritual, kind of more esoteric explanation of these experiences. So yeah, it's always really important for us to understand and to describe and define the experiences that we have. I think in a way that makes the experiences more likely to occur because we're more accepting of them.
Do these experiences tend to happen in the present moment?
Well, almost everybody who has one of these experiences feels that it happens in the present. But there was a theory that these experiences are caused by a recollection, that they don't really happen in the moment. It's only when we look back at them. Then the theory is that when we are in critical situations, we become more alert and therefore we create more memories. So when you look back at these experiences from the future, once they were in the past, then you have a lot more memories. So, and those memories give you the impression that time is stretched out, but it didn't actually during the actual experience. That's a theory, but I don't believe that at all. On the one hand, because almost everybody I actually did a survey in which I asked around 500 people whether they felt that their time expansion experience was a real experience in the moment, or whether they thought it could have been an illusion of recollection caused by memories. And 97% of people were sure that it happened in the present, and 2% of people were unsure, and only 5 people out of 500 felt that it could have been an illusion of recollection. But I think the most important thing about that is that in these situations, people do actually have more time to take preventative action, to contemplate the situation. They have more time to act, to think, and to perceive the situation. And that's not illusion. That's not illusion. That actually does take place. And there are so many stories about people being able to do things which would be impossible in a normal period of time. In a normal period of 3 to 4 seconds, people sometimes take action which would be so complex and so detailed that it would be impossible unless those 3 to 4 seconds expanded to 10 or 20 times more than normal.
Such a fascinating, just a fascinating topic. Are you having more people reach out to you to share their experiences since now there's a place to talk about it?
I find that whenever I publish an article about these experiences, a lot of people write to me to share their experiences. People are always really willing to share these experiences, especially now that they, as you say, once they have a name for these experiences. So in some cases, people have never talked about these experiences because they didn't really understand them. They thought that maybe they were some sort of strange quirk, some sort of strange hallucination. But once they hear that other people are having these experiences, and once they know that these experiences are quite normal, then they become much more willing to share them. So it's quite exciting, really. I feel as though it is a really new area of research, and it could really benefit people. And yeah, people, I'm amazed at how enthusiastic people are about the book and how enthusiastic they are about sharing their experiences.
Would this information help people that are dealing with mental health or probably trauma recovery?
I think so, but partly it's about validating their experience because as soon as you shift into any altered state of consciousness, you do have a new experience of time. What we call our normal experience of time is really created by our normal state of mind. And as soon as you shift out of a normal state of mind, then you shift into a different time world. And that applies to the kind of experiences we talked about. But it also applies to what you might call negative altered states of consciousness, like psychosis and other mental health conditions. People who suffer from depression, severe depression, often talk about a distorted perception of time. Um, and people with dementia also have a very different perception of time. People with dementia seem to step outside time, and the present. They seem to no longer exist in the present, but to be living in the past. Not in the sense of just remembering the past, but the past seems to be real to them again. So yeah, there are lots of different states of mind in which we slip out of a normal experience of time. And if you're not aware that these experiences are normal, then it can feel a bit threatening. It can feel a bit, um, you can feel vulnerable, and it confirms your sense that something is wrong with you. But once you realize that these experiences are quite normal and even potentially healthy, then then maybe that's helpful for people.
Do you feel that there's any alignment between modern physics and their theories, such as quantum mechanics and relativity, and the subject experience of altered time?
There's a very strong connection. Yeah. In fact, I spent a whole chapter discussing physics, and that's what one of the great discoveries of modern physics is that time is not what it appears to be. You have the findings of Albert Einstein, the relativity and the block universe, and they suggest that the time is like space. Time is not like an arrow that moves from the past through the present to the future. Time is kind of spread out. It's like a panorama. So that in a sense, all of the future and all of the past still exist. They're part of this panoramic time, which is that's kind of described by the idea of a block universe. But also, when you look into quantum physics, then you also find some very strange notions of time. In a general sense, there is only one law in physics that suggests that time moves in a forward direction, which is the second law of thermodynamics. But some physicists believe that the second law of thermodynamics is kind of superficial. It just describes superficial reality, and that when you go into the quantum world, it no longer applies. And that's what seems to be the case. In the quantum world, it's very difficult to draw any distinction between the past, present, and future. It seems to blend into one. There are some situations where cause and effect seem to be reversed. There are some situations where what's happening in the present influences the past, and what's going to happen in the future influences the present. So all of our normal notions of linear time break down in quantum physics. I feel that this is just describing the basic reality. I feel that the basic reality of the universe is that time doesn't really exist. Well, certainly linear time does not really exist. I think it really is the case that all time exists in the now, and that in some sense that we can't really understand the future already exists and the past still exists. And that's why when we have what I call time cessation experiences, we do enter this panorama of time in which we can glimpse the future and re-experience the past.
Do you think it's possible to induce a time expansion experience and slow down time at will?
I think it's not easy. Obviously, it's not easy, but I think it is possible, and I think some people do it. We were talking about sport a little earlier, and there are some martial arts where people train themselves to slow down time. I talk about a few experiences in the book where martial arts practitioners describe how a sword that was coming towards them seemed to slow down so that they had time to take evasive action, and it seemed to be blurred because it was moving in slow motion. And they actually train themselves to perceive things in that way. And it's a form of meditation, really. It's about emptying the mind, so that the normal sense of self fades away, our normal self boundary fades away, and then you seem to step into this different time world in which time moves very slowly. So I think we can train ourselves to do that through entering states of meditation. I think if you are an advanced meditator, if you've been meditating regularly for a long, long time, you can enter this deep state of consciousness in which time slows down.
I think it's so fascinating that this is an area, while it's been there for a long time, it's something that we can really more investigate, especially with your book, Time Expansion Experiences. What would you like readers and our listeners to take away from your book?
On the one hand, I'd like to remind people that there is this amazing resilience inside them that maybe they're not aware of as they live their day-to-day lives. But when they face emergencies or crises or accidents, then they will tap into this amazingly resilient part of their being. I think it's always there within us. It's just waiting for the opportunity to arise. It's waiting for the critical situation in which it's needed, and then it will naturally arise. So there is this higher and deeper self within us, which we encounter in these experiences. And, it will always be there to protect us and to improve our chances of overcoming challenges and crises.
Well, we could talk forever on this topic. There's so much rich resources within this book. I found it to be such a phenomenal read. Where can our listeners connect with you and be part of your community and learn more about your work?
The best place is my website, which is stephenmtaylor.com. That's Stephen with a V, M for Mark, stephenmtaylor.com. And that has a lot of information about my articles, my books, and my courses, and so forth.
Well, Steve, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thank you, Marianne. Great speaking with you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Steve Taylor. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new book, Time Expansion Experiences. Time Expansion Experiences is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and everywhere books are sold. And remember, support our indie bookstores. If you don't see it on the shelf, just ask for them to order it. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.